All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. So today is April 29th, 2019, last meeting of the spring semester. We're down to the final hub. Hope your finals are going well. So we got a couple of things, exciting things going on tonight. We have our constitutional amendment vote, as well as a guest speaker, Mr. Mark Del Maestro. He's going to be coming up here in just a second. I'd also like to acknowledge that our faculty advisor, Dr. Charles Loftus, is with us right now. Thank you for being here. It is a privilege to have you here with us. Thank you. To begin, if you haven't done so already, please go to this URL at the bottom here. We are doing an opinion poll for the upcoming fall semester in terms of the day and the timing. So if you haven't taken that poll yet, please do so now.
Sorry, there we go, that's better. You guys mind if I keep the lights off?
No, go for it.
Okay. That works.
Okay, just keep it like that.
Otherwise, you can take a picture of that too. I'm going to go ahead and keep going.
It's on a couple of slides.
So looking ahead at the summer, we are going to be doing a fundraising at Spokes Bar. It's going to be on May 2nd, this coming Thursday. Have the address down there. Do we have a time on that, Rick?
I'm sorry, what? Until the end of the week.
End of the week.
Sunday.
Time. 7?
Yeah.
Okay, 7 o'clock. And then also we're going to be participating for Memorial Day with USA Riders. We're going to be helping them out set up American flags at grave sites at the National Cemetery in Scottsdale. So that's going to be May 25th and 27th, Saturday and Monday morning. I believe I placed the times on our Facebook page as well, so you guys can get all that information.
Is there a method for direct contributions rather than a fundraiser?
Yeah, so
yes.
There are two methods. You could do it on our website. You could do a PayPal direct, and PayPal only takes out like 5% or 2% of whatever you contribute. The second one is you can buy a CRU shirt or kind of merchandise. That also goes to the club too.
Definitely.
So you go to the donate tab on the website.
All right.
Sorry.
No, you're good. With all of that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mark Del Maestro to come up. He is a proud Vietnam veteran, has a great passion for this country and for the youth, and definitely instilling solid conservative values among our youth. Mr. Del Maestro, please, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Why don't you take a seat?
Yes.
I can use this one.
Yeah.
I'm not as young as you are. All righty. A little more. Less than 4. Can you get everything okay?
Nothing's fine.
How's that? Good?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Just turn the light in.
All right, how's that?
Yeah.
All righty. Move this out of the way a little bit. I served in Vietnam from August of '67 to August of '68 with the United States Navy out of the deepwater port of Da Nang. It was a naval support activity, and our mission was to bring supplies to the troops in Hue and Dong Han, the Perfume and Qua Viet River. You can change your seat if you want. So. You don't have to worry, I won't bite you. That better?
Yeah.
Okay. The boats we were on were, Da Nang was a deepwater port, and all the ships came in with all the supplies, and then they were put on our boats, and we brought them to Hue and Dong Han, the Perfume and Qua Viet rivers. The boat was a flat-bottom boat with a ramp in the front. It was a landing craft left over from Korea, from the Korean War. Top speed was 5 miles an hour. There was a 12-man crew on the boats, and we would be carrying howitzer shells and ammunition and food and supplies for the troops, and we were a target all the time. First World War, cut the supply line. So no officers were allowed on our boats, and we had to make the trip because our troops needed their supplies. It was a simple it was a simple mission, but it was a hard one. Going up and down the rivers, throwing grenades in the water to try and blow up the mines that they would plant, firing at our enemy if we were fired upon. That was actually the easy part. Going up and down the rivers, waiting for the next attack, that was the hard part. And losing 3 of my shipmates, that was the hard part too. Dale and Larry were 21, and Mike was 20 years old when they were killed on that riverboat in Vietnam. Of the over 58,200 Americans killed in Vietnam, more than 50% were 23 years old or younger. 5 of them were 16. They lied about their age to get into the military. Be careful what you lie about. Be very, very careful what you lie about. There are things worse than war. There are things worse than war. Living in slavery, living in oppression, living in fear, living in hate. Far, 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 far worse than war. Because the war will end, but the oppression and the slavery will continue. There's no such thing as a good war. If you're looking for a good war, you'll never find one. There is absolutely no such thing as a good war. But there are good lessons of war. And the reason I call them good lessons of war is because the conflict forces us to think. It forces human beings to think. Out of World War II, we learned to fly jet planes. The first jet planes were used in war. The first rockets were used in war. Radar was developed so that we could defend ourselves in war. I mean, all the communications, all the, everything was designed and used by the military because when someone's trying to kill you, you're thinking really good. And those lessons, so the aftermath is rockets take us to the moon and beyond, put our satellites in orbit. I mean, they've done far much good than they've ever done in the horrors of war. Jet planes now fly us all over the world in speed and comfort. I mean, the difference is huge. But all lessons of war. All lessons of war. Lessons of war are the most expensive lessons mankind will ever learn. They cost the lives of millions and millions and millions of people. And the emphasis should always be on what those lessons of war have taught us. There should be a mandatory, I believe, class. World War II, I forgot the number. Was it 100 million people killed in that war? Well, gee, there's a lot of good lessons. I mean, nuclear energy was one of the lessons that came out of that war. We learned how to harness the atom. And now we can't build an atomic generating plant because somebody's afraid. Of course we're going to make mistakes, but we learn by our mistakes. When the only atomic bombs ever used in the history of mankind were dropped in Japan, I've estimated 200 to 300 to 400,000 people were killed. I don't know the exact number. I don't think they ever will, but 2 cities were wiped out. Today, they're huge metropolises, people thriving. Look at the wars force us to think, and look what the good that comes out. Quite amazing. So, The 5 reasons you have your freedom? Anybody? 5 reasons you have your freedom. No? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. All right? Just thought I'd throw that in. Just, you know. During World War I, if you had a family member serving in that war, you would put a blue star in the front window of your home or on a white flag with a red trim around it. I have a nephew that was in Afghanistan. And it was a great honor in those days to serve our country, and the pride of the family was shown by putting that blue star in the front window. If the family member was wounded, the blue star was changed to a silver star. If the family member was killed, the blue star was changed to a gold star. And that's what started Gold Star families, Gold Star wives, Gold Star mothers, to honor these people who have sacrificed for our country. It's not just a veteran sacrificing for our country. A whole lot of sacrifice goes on right here at home. When a young man is killed in war, more than likely the parents and the brothers and sisters and the aunts and uncles and the friends and neighbors, it affects a whole bunch of people. It's not just a veteran passed away. It affects a whole bunch of people. So in the 40s, Congress passed a law that the last Sunday in September would be Gold Star Mother's Day. It's a national holiday. And I call the media and I go, could you guys just say thank you to these families on their day? Just say thank you for their sacrifice. They missed their kids. And you're not going to make their burden any lighter, but if you say thank you, they might feel a little appreciative that other people are understanding their pain, and they might feel a little bit better. And if you just gave them half as much as you give the groundhogs, it would be more than enough. And the media always says to me, yeah, we will. Who has heard of Gold Star Mother's Day? Who's heard of Groundhog Day? See what I mean? So the media and I, we never did get along very well in the first place. So when Donald Trump started calling them fake news, duh, it hit home right for me. That was beautiful. I mean, how simple can it be just to say thank you to a Gold Star mom? I mean, is that so hard? And I caught a reporter one time. I said, why can't you guys just say thank you? Well, that's the price of freedom. We're not teaching the people what their freedom costs. We're trying to take it away. Why do we want to do that? Oh, that's what I thought, but you just confirmed it. You're right. You're right. So please remember them. You can sometimes see a Gold Star mom at a parade or a special event. They're dressed all in white with a gold trim. They're the ones holding a picture against their heart. And if you happen to see a Gold Star mom, just go up and say thank you for your sacrifice for our country. Thank you. And you could make her month that you even know who she is. They walk an anonymity, and it's sad. It really is. But these are the mothers of America's freedom, and they deserve at least a thank you. So please remember them. One of the questions I'm asked is, how many people did you kill in war? And some teachers have said, we told them not to ask that. And I said, well, it's not the question that's so bad. It has to be a proper answer. The answer is way more important than the question, and that makes it a good question if the proper answer is given. For most combat veterans, we don't know how many we kill. We're dropping bombs from planes, not a clue. Shooting missiles and salvos from naval gunships, manning artillery batteries, firing from tanks, even firing from our boats. I'm shooting my machine gun and I'm counting my breaths. Because I can't see the enemy, they're in the jungle, and I know the bullets are coming because I can hear the ricochet off the steel. So I'm shooting back just to hopefully they keep their heads down. But I'm counting my breaths, I'm not. And if I happen to kill one, how am I supposed to know? Oh, I think I got one. Could we stop the war, time out? And we want to see where our bullets went? That's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. And then when I'd say, God, please give me 10 breaths, and then when I got to 10 and I'd hold them, I'd cheat. And when I got to 10, I'd ask God for another 10. Hey, God, you gave me 10, let's another 10, and I'm shooting. And that was my first firefight. And then the second one, you make your peace with God. Listen, God, I'm not going to ask you for breaths anymore. Either you're going to let me live or not. If you take me, okay, but don't take my shipmates. So we're making a deal. Of course, you don't get a contract that he's agreeing to it. You know, it doesn't work like that. So when my shipmates were killed, I was pissed. Not the deal. But the anger goes far beyond that. If you ask a terrorist how many people did you kill, they'll be happy to tell you because that's what they do. They blow up planes and buses and buildings, and the people they kill had no idea that they were about to die. When America's armed forces go after our enemies, they know we're coming, and they have every opportunity to surrender. But in Vietnam, it was different. Our leaders wanted us to give them a body count. They thought that by telling the American people how many of our enemy were being killed, they could show how we were winning the war. So we figured, well, if it was numbers they wanted, it was numbers they're going to get. Well, it's easy. So we inflated the numbers to them. It's easy to say 3, as easy as it is to say 10. And of course they wanted the better number. And then they called us on it. We don't believe you. You need to confirm your kills. So a few of our troops gave their officers severed heads and bags full of ears and said, here, they're confirmed, you count them. Of course, we could never confirm from the boat because we couldn't stop. And whenever a patrol came across anyone that we may have killed or not, they would claim that as their kill. So we could never claim a kill, which we never cared to. It never occurred to us. We were hoping to make it downriver alive. That was our goal. Bring the supplies and make it alive. Today, America's military doesn't do body counts of the enemy anymore. You don't hear it on television anymore. We've pushed ISIS back. We've moved them out of that city. But you don't hear a number because the Army and the Marines don't do body counts. They just offers is the area clear. It's all clear. That means there's no more enemy left. Move on. There's no other question. Instead of thinking of American servicemen and women who have been in combat about how many we have killed, change the thinking. Please change the thinking. And think of us by how many we saved, because collectively, anyone who has worn the uniform of America's armed forces, we have never failed in our #1 mission, and that is to preserve the liberty and the freedom of all Americans. And we've never failed in that mission. So instead of thinking of us by how many we kill, think of us instead by how many we save. Because collectively, we all help save you. And that's what really counts. That's what counts. The reason being, basically, is that you guys are worth dying for. If my kids are worth dying for, so are you. If my grandchildren are worth dying for, so are yours. If my family's worth dying for, so is yours. You're worth dying for. You're that important, you're that valuable, you're that precious. You're worth dying for. And the payback, and the only payback that I can think of, is for you to get the best education you can get. Because peace on earth can only be achieved through education. And that's what I believe. And I don't stand alone there because it wasn't me that built all this stuff. Okay? That wasn't me. I support it, but been here way longer than I ever was or will ever be. So the payback, because you are worth dying for, is to work for and earn the best education you can get and make it work for you. And then play it forward. Because your kids are going to be worth dying for. And you may not think so right now, but boy, that kid comes into your life, and you won't even know where your life was before that kid. That's how amazing kids are. You're worth dying for. War movies. You guys see the war movies? Have you seen a few? Yeah?
Yeah, I've seen some.
Okay. What the war movies are 5% of what war really is. You're only getting 5%. And I'm going to tell you all the truth here. It's not really 5%, it's only 1%. But no one would believe me if I said 1, so I say 5. So it's a little fib there, but just, you know. You don't get your eardrums blown out in the movies after the bombs go off. You don't get to pick shrapnel from your body. You don't get to feel the blood drying in your hands after filling a body bag. You don't get to smell the smell. The smell alone will make you sick. You don't get that in the movies. You don't get to feel the fear of what it's like to have someone trying to kill you day after day, week after week, month after month. Or you them. There is no honor in taking the life of another human being. There is no honor in it. It changes you and twists you and knots you and rips you up inside in ways you cannot even imagine. And you don't get that in the movies. And you will never go to war and 2 or 3 hours later get up from the theater and go home. So the next time you go and see a war movie, understand you're only getting 5% of what war really is. 5%. I want to talk to you now about the children of war. When a country hosts a war, the children are right in the middle. They don't draw lines and say, well, this is the battlefield. The kids are over here, don't go over there. That's not. Kids are right in it. In Vietnam, children grew up with war all around them. They never knew what peace was. If they weren't born and raised, well, the Americans were there for 15 or 16 years. They were born and raised fighting the French. And before the French, they were fighting the Chinese, and before the Chinese, they were fighting the Japanese, and then they were fighting the Chinese again. They never knew what peace was. It was a constant. They were constantly at war. and they grew up with it. The children of Vietnam had to learn how to make and set a booby trap so they knew how not to step in one. It was common to have their friends killed or go missing, their villages moved. They'd sleep in their huts and they'd dig a hole in the ground so that they would sleep below the ground, so if a bomb went off, all the shrapnel would be above them. They had a better chance of surviving. Because Vietnam was a guerrilla war, there was no front line. The armies met wherever they happened to meet, and they would fight. And sometimes children were caught in the crossfire. We fought 2.5 armies in Vietnam. We fought 2.5 separate and distinct armies in Vietnam. The first army we fought was the North Vietnamese Regular Army. They were a uniformed army. They came down from the north along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And 90% of the fighting was between these armies. And they fought wherever they happened to meet. And sometimes children were caught in the crossfire. And it was common to have an American soldier run out and see a child in harm's way and scoop that kid up and bring them back and put them in a safe place, protect them with their bodies or whatever they had to do. And then after the battle, would carry that kid to either try to find his parents or bring him to an orphanage and make sure they got taken care of. And that was common. That was common practice. Because you could see a kid, and the little kids, they didn't wear pants. They didn't wear pants. They didn't have diapers, or they wore a shirt. And then when they got old enough to be where they could go to the bathroom, they wore shorts, and so you knew the ages a little bit better. The Viet Cong, that was the first army we fought, was the North Vietnamese Regular Army. The second army we fought were the Viet Cong. They were South Vietnamese people, civilians and guerrilla warfare fighters all at the same time. And the half an army we fought were the people that supported them, so you never knew who your enemy really was. The Viet Cong would go into a village in South Vietnam, take the village leaders, cut their heads off, put their heads on a pole in the middle of the village. If you don't do what we say, your head can go on the pole next. And it did not matter how old you were. And the Viet Cong would say to the people, we need food and supplies. We need tunnels dug. We need booby traps built and set. We need a lot of work and help. And a lot of that work was done by children. It was common to see 8, 9, 10-year-old boys at the entrances to our bases, laughing with us, joking with us, begging for food or whatever they could get. But they were really doing reconnaissance. They were counting how many soldiers went in, which direction did the patrol go, what bunker was the ammo dump in the base, how far was it from the tree line so they could set up to bomb it. They were doing reconnaissance. 10, 11, 12-year-old kids could put 100, 200 pounds of supplies on a bicycle and push that bicycle miles through the jungle, digging tunnels. There were some 10-year-old kids. They were such good guerrilla warfare fighters, they could kill you in a second. And it was wonderful. They thought that was fabulous. How much fun was that? They had no clue the consequence of what they were doing. Children. The Viet Cong would take a 2, 3, 4-year-old little girl, put an explosive device in her arms, disguise it as a loaf of bread, a basket of food, a bouquet of flowers, and send her at us. You want to see your mommy? All you have to do is take this package to those men over there. And we had to shoot because we didn't want to die. And we had to shoot because we knew if we showed this enemy a weakness in our defense, they would send a whole lot more kids. And you could not die with that child. You could not run out and die with that child or try and save that child because you had pledged your allegiance to each other, that you would do everything you could to keep each other alive. But there wasn't much left of that little girl, so the Viet Cong would take another little girl and just send her with a bouquet of flowers or a basket of food or a loaf of bread. And now they had a picture of a dead baby. They could show the world how we were baby killers, how we were killing children bearing gifts. How horrible were we? And these children were taken from the parents of the South Vietnamese people who were working and fighting and telling their friends and neighbors that the South Vietnam must stay free and America's going to help us, so you have to keep fighting. What would you have done to keep your children safe if you were fighting for your freedom? What would you have said? Would you have continued to fight for your freedom knowing that your child could be killed? Or even after you've lost your kid? What would you have done? You don't all have to answer at one. What would you have done?
Well, idealistically, if our country was being invaded and our children, our families were at risk, you would do everything possible to protect them, and by any means necessary.
It's a tough question, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
The reason you probably never even had the thought about it is because the answer is God bless our troops.
Yeah.
Remember I dropped in that 5 reasons you have your freedom? Answer's right there. God bless our troops. But one of the great lessons, I'm going to divert just for a minute because I'm going to come back to the kids. One of the great lessons of Vietnam was what did our enemy learn? And our enemy learned that they couldn't defeat us through our military. Russia and China were sending Vietnam every weapon, every device, every trainer, everything they could to defeat us on the battlefield. And they were getting slaughtered. They were getting slaughtered. And the lesson that they learned was, we can't defeat America through their military. It will never happen. But look at the idiots they elect as their leaders. Wow. We just have to fund the Democratic Party. That's all we have to do. Make sure these people get into the colleges and universities and in our schools, and they get elected. We just have to fund the party. That's all we have to do. And we could beat them from within. And boy, they're winning, aren't they? They're winning. They said, we don't have to build an army, we don't have to do anything but fund the Democratic Party. And all that collusion stuff with Trump was going to work with Russia and it's such BS. All Russia has to do and China has to do and all our enemies have to do is fund the Democratic Party. Make sure these idiots get elected. Because that was a lesson from Vietnam. Look at how inept our leaders are. They're actually teaching their young people to spit on their veterans when they come home. And they're doing it. If they can teach them to do that, this is a home run. It's a home run. It's a no-brainer. We can turn them against each other. We don't have to fight their military at all. Huge lessons from Vietnam. Never taught. Of course, it's not taught, but it's absolutely true. You can see it. If you just look, you can see it. It's amazing. Children were killed in Vietnam by the bombing. More bombs were dropped in Vietnam than all of World War II. a soldier would pick a baby up from its cradle and the cradle would explode, booby-trapped. And America's military would say, these people have to give up. They can't keep doing this because they're being decimated. And Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the communists from the north, would look over the battlefield and see he was losing every single battle. By a lot. His armies were being decimated. And America's military would say, he has to give up. He can't keep doing this. But he would be looking at the divide in America, with racism and the war in Vietnam dividing America more and more. And Ho Chi Minh would say, I could win this war if all I have to do is persevere. All I have to do is keep going. And if I have to send a few more kids, so what? So what? Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's worth the price. When I got home, there was I lived in New Jersey, right over the George Washington Bridge. And they were going to have I was asked to join John Kerry's Veterans Against the War, which I said to them, you're going against the troops. What the hell's the matter with you people? No, you don't understand. I said, okay, come to the rally. So I thought I'd go to a New York City demonstration they were demonstrating against the war, and I would cheer for the troops. I'm cheering for the troops. Nobody else was. They were getting spit on, and I would cheer for them. So I got to the Port Authority, and I got off the bus and started walked right out on the street, and there's a bunch of protesters, and there's young kids with pictures of dead Vietnamese babies. And I got triggered, and I said, could you not carry that picture, because I didn't know how many kids they had to send for you to have that picture. And of course I wasn't very nice about it. And my anger quickly rose to rage, and I was immediately surrounded, and the screaming and the spitting and all the... And it struck me that someone could die here, and I knew it wasn't going to be me. And at the same moment I realized there was nothing here worth dying over. Was it going to kill somebody for carrying a picture of a dead kid? For what? They would use that, we didn't spit on you enough, is how they would use it. So I walked away, angry and more angry, and more angry. And I had to take a breath, and now I speak to young people. Does anybody not understand how children were used in this war? If you don't, I'd like to speak with you and maybe try and convince you about children of war and how they're used. Today, there are children being brought across the border, forced into prostitution. 11, 12, 13-year-old girls. I can't imagine how I know that devastates them for the rest of their life. And many years ago, there was I caught a news broadcast. There was a reporter who had brought his kid to the hospital, and they couldn't see his kid right away because they were having a crisis. So the reporter, being a reporter, wanted to know what the crisis was so he could report on it. And the pimps had dropped off teenagers as old as 18, 19 years old that they had brought across the border 4 or 5 years ago. And these girls were now diseased, beaten, totally devastated. And they were finished with them, and they were dropping them off at the hospital. And the hospital was being overwhelmed because they couldn't handle all these girls. So the reporter was saying, what's happening to these girls? And it made the news, and I said, wow, I never even thought of it. I didn't even know what was going on. But I never heard that piece again. I never heard it again. So a few years later, I asked a policeman, you know, I heard a newscast about girls being dropped off at the hospital because they were being forced into prostitution. And they were going nuts, and they were dropping them off. I said, they still doing that? And the policeman said, no, they're not doing that anymore. I said, what are they doing? He says, we figure they must be killing them. Because we don't know they're here, and if we don't know they're here, we don't know they're missing. And when they're used up, it's easier just to kill them and bury them or have them cremated and be done with them, because there's always a new supply. I said, why can't we just shut the border down and stop that? Just for the sake of these kids. How sad is that? So I call them children of war. Because war is hell and they're in hell. And just because they're being used today all over the world. They're being sold into slavery, used as maids or whatever. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's going on with these kids. Unbelievable. And I don't hear anybody doing anything. So if you want to hear from me that we should put a wall on the border, not only should we put a wall on the border, we should shut it down. Close it. And then the Democrats went crazy because they were saying, oh, they're separating the children from their mothers. Well, most of the kids, 40% of the kids coming across the border are not with their parents. They're with the coyotes being trafficked. And they're trying to find out. So by separating them, they can say to the kid, is that really your dad? Is that really your mom? And usually the kid will tell them, no, it's not really my, because they not old enough to really figure out what's going on. And they separate them because they're trying to catch these kids at the border before they go into the hell of the prostitution ring. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, why not? Why don't you tell the whole story? Why don't you tell them the whole truth? There are also children of war whose parents join our military and go overseas and they're killed and they become a child of war. They're as American as you are. They could be in this school. They could be lost their mother or their father in a war. Children of war, all of them. I know that there'll never be a day where there'll be no children of war, I get it. But this goal should strive to be, let's at least push for that day. At least consider these kids. A tour in Vietnam was 1 year. A 12-month tour, unless you're a Marine. The Marines, there was 13 months. They always had to do it a little bit better. That spirit of the Corps. Love those guys. If you were fortunate enough to come home standing up in one piece, you were met at the airports and at the bus stations and at the military bases by people spitting in your face, telling you to go back to Vietnam and die. We have a present for you, as we were handed bags full of dog crap. We'd go for a job for an interview and know that if we even wanted to get the interview, we had to leave the military portion of our application blank. Asking a lady out for a date, arrive at her home to find her parents standing in a doorway. You're not dating our daughter. Please hurry and get off the property. Now, this was not being done by all Americans. This was actually being done by very few Americans. But it's a classic example of what happens when good people do nothing. When you see injustice and you see indifference and you walk on by, you allow it to continue. I was leaving from Newark Airport in New Jersey on my next duty station, and I always flew military standby in my uniform. And two girls and they knew the ribbons from Vietnam. That was part of their training. You spit on a veteran with the ribbons, because that'll tell you he's been in Vietnam. So two girls with Coke bottles full of water, they filled their mouths, spit all over me, go back to Vietnam and die, and then they just kept walking. And as I'm wiping the spit from my face and I'm looking around, the people are walking as if they didn't see anything. They walked by like I didn't see anything. They put their hands up, or they looked the other way, and I was looking at all of them, and I kept looking back, and I thought, oh man, I'll never be one of them. I hope I'll never be one of them. I have a voice. I have a voice. But it's sad because most people don't have a voice, and they're afraid to even stand up. They're afraid to even go to vote. And it amazes me. And what shook me to the core was when New York State, the governor signed into law that you could abort a baby at 9 months. And everybody cheered. All the elected officials in the room cheered. And that shook me to the core. You're going to kill people and make it okay? Why stop at 9 months? Why don't you go to 18 years old? Just go to 18. That's what they want. And if we catch you praying or saying the Pledge of Allegiance, you're aborted. And that's total control. Why stop at 9 months? Just unbelievable. So today, Vietnam veterans got together years ago, and they put together a black POW MIA flag. As you can see it. Prisoners of war missing in action. You've seen that black flag? Prisoners of war missing in action. And it's the only flag ever sanctioned by Congress to fly below the American flag. And that flag flies to remind all Americans that we will not forget the men and women who become a prisoner or go missing in action. That we will do everything we can to bring them home, no matter how small the part. And that we will never, ever again will a defender of America ever come home to an ungrateful country. That cannot happen ever again. There were two platforms of protest during the Vietnam War. There were two separate and distinct platforms of protest during the Vietnam War. One of the platforms of protest where black people wanted to be treated equally. They wanted the same rights and opportunities as everybody else. And that was a good, strong, solid platform to stand on, as strong then as it is today for anyone. For anyone. The second platform of protest were people protesting the Vietnam War. We don't want the war anymore. We want it to stop. And the protesters were asked, well, well, what do you want? He said, we want to see our boys come home. I said, but when they come home, you spit in your face. Is that your way of saying, gee, we're glad to see you? The platform you're standing on is a little weak there, a little shaky. And how does that make sense? What is it? The war was about defending America against our enemies overseas. During World War II, Germany and Japan got bigger and stronger and mightier, and they were conquering countries. Japan was going into Vietnam and China, the Philippines, and Germany was conquering Europe. And America was sitting there, not our business. The oceans will protect us. We have nothing to do with anything. We're just going to stay isolated and just be our own little country all by ourselves. We're not going to bother anybody. It's not going to matter to us. And the attack on Pearl Harbor woke us up. And today, the question becomes, how does America embrace the world? When all we know for sure is that we must. And how do we do it? And that'll be a constant battle, constant conversation. How does America embrace the world? How do we do that? I will tell you today, and I know it's not top secret information, because if I know it, our enemy surely knows it. There are admirals in the Navy, and I don't know how many there are, but there's a lot of them. And they are assigned, when they make admiral, to intelligence in certain areas. And one of the areas that they're assigned is the whole world is divided up into sections. And every admiral that's assigned a section is responsible for knowing what's going on in his sector. Anywhere in the world. He could have one country, or he could have 10 countries. And in all the countries there are operatives feeding information, as they're paid to do. Who's your local sheriff or police or mayor or a dictator of your country or a president, or what your gross national product, or how are your people doing, how they're living, what, all the information is sent to these admirals, and every week they go before the Joint Chiefs of Staff and they give their report of how the rest of the world is doing as a whole. And that report is put together, and then the Joint Chiefs of Staff go to the President and say, this is our report of how the world is, where the hot spots are, where there's famine, where there's no water, where there's whatever there's issues. Because we're embracing the world. Part of the deal. So if there's any issue coming up, like maybe we could have stopped the slaughter in Africa when they were having the genocide a few years ago. Maybe we could have sent in troops and stopped it. But what would have been the no good deed goes unpunished consequence? So the argument was, what should we do? And by the time they figured it all out, it was already over. How do we embrace the world? Ongoing question for the rest of our lives. All part of that platform of protest that comes right down to, I don't want chili every on Wednesday in the cafeteria or whatever. I want tacos, or All platforms of protest. It comes right down to everything that you guys do. You're the Republican Party, you're against us. And they're gonna throw every slur at you and hit you with everything, right? Because you're on a different platform. What do you mean you don't like socialism? What do you mean you don't want people to tell you what to do? You mean you want to stand on your own? What the hell's the matter with you?
Building the wall as an example.
What's the matter? You want to think for yourself? What's the matter with you? You want to get an education where you can stand on your own and be proud and be honored? What's wrong with you? You're gonna get it. Just for standing on a platform. They're all platforms of protest.
I'm getting to the point where I want to build a wall around myself to block out everybody else.
Then it's too late. I know exactly how you feel.
Y'all.
So that's why I want to talk to you about your vote. Now, I know you know how important it is, but I want to give you what I call ammunition. When you're speaking to somebody that doesn't want to vote, you can maybe use this as part of your ammunition, as part of your discussion to defend why you're on your platform and why you vote. There are 4 reasons that I found why people don't vote. They're too lazy to go. My vote doesn't count. I just cancel each other out. Or my vote doesn't really count. So those are the, I think I got it covered? Did I miss anything? That's pretty much it. That's what you hear, right? Too lazy, what's the point,
Doesn't make a difference. 1 vote out of 1,000.
So my response is,
I actually have heard another reason, kind of.
I can't hear you, guys.
I have heard another reason that
Go ahead.
one of my friends that will remain nameless said to me, he said, I think it's time we stopped trusting fallible people with our government. So I just don't vote for people. That was his reasoning.
All right, well, let me give you some more. Let me give you some more.
Mark, we're at that 1 hour mark, so after you're done with this, can we talk about the greatest covenant?
Talk about what?
The greatest covenant?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I'll do that right after this.
Okay.
In a presidential election, 50 to 60% of people actually vote who are eligible. So if you were to vote in that election, your vote counted as 2. You actually voted for twice because you voted for the people that didn't show up. Okay? In this off-year election, when they have this 2 years later, after the presidential, an average of 25% of the people show up. So your vote counted as 4. You actually voted 4 times because you voted for the 3 people that didn't show up. You understand what I'm saying? That's how important your vote is. If your vote counts as 1, it's when 100% of everybody that's eligible to the vote actually shows up at the polls. Then your vote counts as 1. Well, that's never going to happen. And when is that ever going to happen? I don't think it ever will.
This is why the California Democrat ballot harvesting
Right.
concept is so powerful.
Yes. Because you're actually, if you voted in an election where 25% of the people showed up, your vote counted as 4. And if you told a friend, called you up and said, how should I vote? And you told them, you just got 8 votes. That's how easy it is. Now, you cancel each other out. I've been to war, and the only way I've canceled anybody out is when I shot and killed them. That's a cancellation. That's when you cancel somebody out. That's it. When you vote, your vote is counted. As a woman, as an age group, as a demographic, as a religion, as it's a whole bunch of things that these Democrats and Republicans get every information that they can possibly get from you so that they can change your mind somehow, some way. And when you stand up to vote, this is who I am and I'm voting for whoever I vote for. It counts. It really counts. It doesn't count. It always counts because they're all counting it. So I'm trying to give you something to say back. What they call it the truth, which, it's hard to do. But that's what, the vote is very important. And if you can use that part as your ammunition, your vote will always count as more than one. Okay, this is one of my pet things that I speak about. It's called The Greatest War and the Covenant. Liberals hate me for this because it takes global warming and the race car right off the table. And the greatest war is you're in it already. And you will be in it for the rest of your life. Not going to change, it's not going away. So if you can just listen to this part, it's only a few minutes, but for me it's very important that you understand the war you're in. We're living in an absolutely perfect world. We're living in an absolutely perfect world. The earth is the perfect size with the perfect gravity. And the earth is turning approximately 1,000 miles an hour in its relationship to the sun so that all of the earth can get the benefit of the sun's life-giving rays. In the center of the earth is a solid ball of iron and nickel, and it's turning faster than the earth is turning, fast enough to create enough friction to keep the lava it floats in hot. And all the volcanoes are the pressure relief points. And this solid ball in the center of the earth is Earth's generator. It generates the magnetic field that protects us from the solar storm of the sun. The particles coming off the sun would bombard the earth and we could not have life on it as we know it. And this magnetic field catches these particles and forces them around the earth, protecting us from that solar storm. And this magnetic field also points our compasses north and gives us our sense of direction. And the earth is the perfect tilt on its axis of 23.5 degrees, gives us our 4 seasons. And the moon holds the earth from wobbling off its axis and controls our tides. And the earth is the perfect distance from the sun with the perfect atmosphere and the perfect temperature range. And all the planets are in a perfectly flat line in their orbit around the sun, keeping their orbit and Earth's orbit in absolutely perfect balance. All the plants, all the animals, the air, the water, the design of our bodies, all of this was done for us. If you think there's no God, please think again. What makes us perfect as human beings, what makes us absolutely perfect as human beings, are our differences. If we were all the same, we would have died of boredom long ago. What makes us absolutely perfect are our differences. The greatest war human beings will always fight, will forever fight, is to accept and honor and respect our differences and to learn to work together in spite of our differences. God chooses the color of our skin. God chooses if we are a man or a woman. God chooses our parents and our brothers and our sisters, and God chooses the nation we are born in. We live in a dangerous world because it has to be a dangerous world. It will always be a dangerous world because it's the danger, it's the conflicts, it's the challenges that forces human beings to think. It's the dangerous world that will test our resolve and force us to find our courage. It's the dangerous world that will define who we really are as a person, as a character. The United States of America has a covenant with God like no other nation on this planet. We, the people, are supposed to be the greatest nation economically, militarily, and spiritually. So powerful, so strong, that our enemies would cower in our shadow, and the world would be a safer place. And just look at the difference from the last administration, when the President Obama announced we were no longer a Christian nation. A lie, 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 lie. Our economy was in the toilet, and our military was being decimated from within by our own president. And then Donald Trump gets elected, and God comes back, and our military's getting stronger, and our economy's going through the roof, and our enemies have receded. You don't see them anymore. When Obama, you saw them all over. Korea was shooting rockets, and Russia and China were rising, and Iran was going crazy. And now, what do you hear? Very little. Very little. We cannot break this covenant that the United States has with God. And you must understand the war we're in and the war you'll be in for the rest of your life. The greatest war and the covenant. Understand it. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments?
From what year to year did you serve in Vietnam? For what years did you serve in Vietnam?
August of 67 to August of 68. I was in Vietnam when Martin Luther King was killed. And I understood the hurt. I understood the hurt because this was their leader. This was a leader that the black people looked up to and loved and cherished. And I felt the same way about Jack Kennedy as our president. And he was killed when I was in high school. And I was decimated by his assassination, and I'm thinking that the black people must have felt the same way as I did about Martin Luther King. I didn't see a difference. And the black people were coming up to me in Vietnam, "You killed my brother, you killed my brother." And I said, "Well, if I'm that good a shot, you ought to be my friend." But that's a hell of a shot for Vietnam. And then Bobby Kennedy was killed while I was in Vietnam. And it all simmered down. It all got quiet. And I'm sitting on my riverboat, hugging my rifle, praying to God, "Please, God, don't let this rifle become my best friend." Because I didn't know who my enemy was anymore. I'm in Vietnam fighting what I thought was my enemy, and I couldn't understand how these people were our enemy when their major means of transportation was a bicycle. How could they be our enemy? And when these two men were killed, I'm hugging my rifle, praying that please God, don't let this rifle become my best friend. And when I saw Osama bin Laden for the first time, and he held up his best friend, his AK-47, he held it up, "This is my best friend." I thought, wow, both our prayers were answered. Be careful what you pray for. Be careful what you pray for. So, interesting. Lessons not taught. Or lessons not learned. Any more questions? Any more?
Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
So you got me on tape, and you can, if they come after you, and I can come and save you, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Again, if they come after us again.
Yeah, again.
Keyword.
Show the video. This is who you have to deal with.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good thing you gave me that chair.
Yeah. All right, let's get this screen back up and running here.
You want a better picture of me?
Need to put it on
Actually,
Google.
Yeah,
We
just
put it on
take it
Google.
this way, yeah.
When we're done with the meeting, we'll do a group photo, and then we'll definitely
All right,
get a better,
Yeah.
get a
All
better
right.
image.
all right, thank you.
Mark, thank you for your powerful message
All
and
right.
for your dedication
All
and
right.
your service
Thanks,
to our
guys, thanks
nation.
for having me.
Let's go ahead. We're gonna switch gears here. We're gonna go over the constitutional amendment modifications. We're gonna open the forum up. It's gonna be open forum. We can debate. I just ask that if a debate does occur, we maintain civility and respect. That's all I'm asking for. So here we are.
Point of order, do you have a forum?
You have 7 qualified.
7
voters.
qualified.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, I think
What's that?
we have a forum.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. So to begin with, here's the first proposal. In white is the original context, and in yellow is the change we'll be looking at. So this is Article 11, Statements of Compliance. This is the non-discrimination statement. The original is red. This organization shall not discriminate on the basis of age, color, ethnicity, gender, national origin, disability, handicapped, race, religion, or sexual orientation. What we're going to be discussing and voting on tonight, we will add 2 points. First point, this organization does not condone any sort of political extremism that uses identity politics to discriminate and will expel individuals who fail to respect the inherent dignity of each person's humanity. That's the first add-on point. The second, understanding this organization supports the right to free speech for all members, affiliates, and guests. Dialogue may contain controversial content that is not palatable for all audiences. This organization will not restrict dialogue upon the basis of controversiality. With that, I'm going to open the floor up. We can go ahead and start going over these points and start going over concerns and all of that. Yep.
Section 2, or Section B, whatever. See, that's all one sentence. I don't really understand, or rather, I'm a little bit lost on the verbiage of, it says you will expel individual who, under what rule, under what method, under what procedure. I mean, is it automatic? Who is it up to?
So-
Under what definitions?
The existing rules that exist right now for expelling a member.
Can we get those up then? So that we can at least, not to try to be difficult, but.
No, I
see
hear
how
you.
that- How that correlates into existing rules.
So let me pull it up on our thing here. This might take a little bit. I know, super secret information up there. CRU Constitution.
Because my understanding, I mean, I guess
Article
we'll have to
10.
see what the existing rules are, but that just seems too definitive. You know,
Right.
You're saying you will do it, but I would assume that anytime we expel a member, it would probably be by some kind of vote, I should hope. And if it's not, then perhaps we need to look at that as well.
So here's the full text for the expulsion. Any member who has taken issue for the conduct of an attendee is free to voice their
Can we pull that up
concerns.
a little bit?
Sure.
Just so I do better reading instead of trying to.
Oh no, taking a survey. Okay, it's right here. I don't think I can make it any bigger without it cropping it.
That's all right.
So, you can read it for yourself, but let me give you a rundown from how it existed from the College Republicans to today. Any member can bring up a concern for another member in the room right now. You can come up to the executive board and say, listen, this guy is a jerk, he's doing X, Y, and Z, he's an issue, and we'll take a look at it. So, you come to us with a concern, or the executive board, then they would debate it. And it has to be under a mechanism of, okay, well, we'll have a dialogue with that person to address those concerns. So you're not gonna be banned for the first offense. And we've had this problem before with other people, but we would have a vote on warning a person for their behavior. They have to learn from their mistakes and then move on. If there's a repeated instance, though, the executive board would vote on that ban. So the executive board has to vote unanimously whether or not to expel a member in the executive session. If a person dissents on the executive board, then that would be a blockage for it. The other one would be voting in the membership or having a trial for like an impeachment or expulsion. That's the second option. Third option would be Charles Loftus as the faculty advisor. He has the power as the advisor for the club to remove members for being potential threats.
So one thing, I mean, I'd like to get into that, but I was just reading that, I mentioned this to you prior to this meeting tonight. What is that, 3? Yeah. See, I'm talking, that's what I don't like. I like this, it says, may also be subject to expulsion.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, that wordage is fine. I've repeatedly brought this up, how I do not like the fact that it says we will.
Okay.
That, it should be discretionary for one.
Okay.
It should be up to, again, this is where interpretation becomes problematic.
Yeah.
Or not problematic. That's the point though, is that there's no ability to discern between, what are you bound by? You're bound by that, like, period.
So when we say we're going to expel members for having a controversial, or they say something, those are just grounds for removal. This is the process to remove someone. So a crime, if they commit a crime, they get a misdemeanor, something outside of the club, or they do something inside the club, we're just adding a list of what are crimes that could be charged with. But this is the mechanism on here. So if you do something or someone does something that is egregious and it falls within the category, they're not going to be banned for the first offense. Because that's what it says.
That's not what this amendment says. This amendment also does not say, if you could go back, I'm picking on the word, because this is our Constitution.
Right.
So I'm definitely going to pick on the wording of it, and the wording of it does not provide any of that. It does not explain, or it doesn't say persuade to, so section so-and-so.
Would you be opposed to?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, let's see, expel members, expel individuals.
I'm just picking that out because I'm sure this will pass regardless. But I don't necessarily support,
And what article was that? That was,
10.
was it 10? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
10C.
See.
Okay. So it's pursuant to or accordance to Article 10,
should we not
Section
also
C.
change, again, you will expel or may be subject to expulsion?
Well, it's in accordance to. So if it conflicts with the Article 10, then it won't go in that
But
route.
what's the big deal about saying may be subject, again, you have it in the actual section, I just don't understand why we're so stuck.
So may expel.
I'm stuck on it, but I also don't understand why you're stuck on it.
So the reason for this is we're trying to have strong language to show ASU first and
Then should we
foremost.
not
Because of
change
the
the other?
incident that we had recently, we want to prevent them from happening again. To show that we had learned from those past experiences,
Right.
and we're going to prevent this from happening again.
So change it throughout the Constitution then. If you're not gonna have a uniform, then I don't.
So Luke and I said that over the summer, we want to have a committee to go over the Constitution, to fine-line it, because this is probably the 10th version from when we switched over from the College Republicans, and there's been one layer added on top of another, so we do want to streamline it, and that's a project that we're going to work on in the summertime.
And
How
perhaps-
about the verbiage of will be subject to expulsion in accordance to?
What did you say?
We can say, like-
Yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
I don't understand, I agree.
Subjected,
Will be
subjected,
to
subjected.
expulsion in accordance to.
Again, at least that's,
No, this is good. I like this
Yeah.
because I am not a legal person. Will be subjected.
Subject.
no, subject.
Subject to expulsion.
Again, that's, I don't like that either. because
Remove
it's
the,
too definitive, but.
Of individuals.
To expulsion of individuals.
Will be subject to expulsion in accordance to Article 10, Section C.
Put individuals before the will.
And individuals will be subject to expulsion.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes it, that kind of puts it both ways there. So it is very strong language there, but it also does provide a certain amount of leeway.
Okay,
Okay.
is this good? Julie, do you want to put the camera on the proposal so
Yeah.
viewers can read it?
I also believe that 3 and 2 3 contradicts 2. Or vice versa.
So we can have conversations and debates, and you have the right to free speech, and we will never say you can't say that in here, we're gonna control your speech. But it has to be from a place of respect and the understanding that the whole purpose of your speech is to convince other people to change their minds. If someone's an asshole about it, you're not changing minds, and in fact, you're making our own position worse off than it currently is. So it's just putting a level of decorum, and you need to have a little bit of respect for issues that involve certain people that will not like what you're saying. Does that make sense? For instance, if we're talking about immigration, and we're saying that we have standards in this country with our civilization that are incompatible with another civilization, child marriages, or as an example, or female genital mutilation, that's acceptable in their culture but not acceptable in our culture. Do we want to bring people into this country from that society? I would say no. Antifa would call me a racist for that, and they have called me a racist for that. So how could we have that debate and be respectful but still stick to our principles? And I want you to stick to your principles. I want everyone to stick to their principles, and we're never going to agree, and that's totally fine. But you have to do it from a place of respect.
See, in a respectful debate, I would say, okay, I agree with you, but what about the people that are trying to escape that culture? You know, what about them? Do you leave them subject to the culture that they don't wanna be a part of anymore and let them in here, or do you wanna let them in here to be safe?
Right.
You know,
But see,
that's
that's a
simple
dialogue.
question right
But
there.
if you were responded back to, screw you, Rick, you're a racist,
Right.
flip a table
No,
over,
I wouldn't do it.
that doesn't add anything to the debate.
Your point would be valid, but so would mine,
Right,
you know? And then that is something I would bring up in an actual debate, you know?
right.
I'm just, I guess my point, to me, adding 2, or, well, actually, yeah, adding 2, 3's fine, I guess. I suppose it just kind of goes with 1. I don't understand what 2 is basically. I mean, it's just additional, 1
3's a
covers 2.
reassurance, it's really
Well,
a
1 covers
reassurance.
2. I mean, does it not? Like, identity politics and I mean, the number 1 is literally shall not discriminate on base, and everything is there. I mean, like, you don't need 2.
Right, so.
I think the thing here is that you guys are trying to. You guys didn't adhere to the Constitution originally. I think I'm not trying to make accusations. Well, I don't know if that's correct, but you guys failed to apply the Constitution properly based on Section 1, perhaps, and so you're trying to add to it. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying number 1 can be used to apply number 2. We don't need number 2, and I don't understand why we're fluffing up the Constitution and making it more complicated than it probably already is. Simplicity is best.
But the problem with when you have simplicity, you get instances where, for the Second Amendment as an example for the US Constitution, they want to cherry pick that it applies to a militia only, not to the rights of the people to own and bear arms.
But it's still simple, though, if you go by the strict adherence to the original meaning of what a militia means.
Right.
Which has been debated and handed down in opinions and decisions from the Supreme Court. The point is that it is simple, and this is where I get into, it's all up to interpretation, which is why it needs to be simple and left up to interpretation, and that's why you have to have strong, capable leaders, executive board, whatever it might be, and that's, no offense, but you all failed. And you are acknowledging that, you have acknowledged that, but the answer is not to add and not to complicate things, it's to properly apply what is there already.
Mhm. So when we say that organizations shall not discriminate on the basis, we have never discriminated on the executive board, people attending the room, people of different backgrounds and national origins or sexuality in the room. We've never cherry-picked anyone and excluded anyone from the room. So that's been upheld on the Constitution end of it. What we're adding to is on Section 2 is people who then use that speech to belittle a different group for those same reasons. So we're no longer talking about
Within or in our private lives. I mean, I'm not gonna be dictated by what this group, I'm not gonna.
We have no control with what you do at home. We're
I
talking
agree,
about,
that's my point.
we're talking
So
about when you are in the room here, or when
Okay.
you say you are part of CRU, you represent the club, even if you're not even the executive board. You sitting in the room and saying, I went to CRU today, you are now an extension of CRU
Yeah,
in
when
that
I
regards.
use crew within the, I understand that.
So when we have an individual who says, I was a part of, College Republicans United, and I hold these beliefs, and I'm liking these pages on Facebook, and I look on that person's profile and says, member of CRU, and they're part of an alt-right forum, that makes it look like they're one and the same. That's where we have to be careful
But that's
with.
also in their private lives.
But it's public.
You have to separate what people do outside. I'm saying if you link, that's not linking them. Just because you see two things on someone's page doesn't mean that those two things are linked.
But it's the reality of employment. So if you're a
So are
teacher.
we into employment? Again, this is all outside of the
Sure.
club. We're talking about the club right now. We're not talking about private lives. We're not talking about what, you are trying to say that things that are outside of the reach of the club, well, employers, that's outside, that's where you.
But it happens, that's the reality of the situation. If you're a teacher and you support a political position, you can get fired for it. Or not even a teacher, but in any kind of private industry. Anytime that you put
But it
stuff
should be left up
public
to
out
the
there.
individual.
What's that?
It should be left up to the individual.
In a perfect world, that I would agree with you, but we don't live in a perfect world.
Unfortunately, in the age of the internet, everything is kind of interconnected at this point, so.
Then don't be part of the club. I don't know what to tell you, but like, if you're not gonna accept, I'm just saying, and then we haven't even gone on to the next section, which.
We'll vote on that separate, because one doesn't affect the other.
Well, you talk about okay, again, I'm just rehashing what I've said to you outside the club or whatever. You supports the right to free, I have a big issue with saying that you support the right to free speech, and then you turn around and say that you'll expel someone for having a view, which is.
It's not even just the view, but if you found out a person was a literal card-carrying member of the KKK or the National Socialist
I'm
Party.
not saying I condone that, I'm not saying I support that, but I support their right to believe that.
Okay, but
And I can try and convince them to not believe that, but again, it's their right to have that viewpoint and that mindset.
right.
I
So
mean-
here's the thing. If a Marxist were to join CRU, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party USA, and their views are not what we believe in, they're not made out for the club. So here's what the purpose of CRU is, okay? To spread the tenets of Jeffersonian republicanism in the original intent of the Constitution, limited national government, reduce federal spending, personal liberty, the liberty from government, and et cetera, as you can read it, to promote classical republicanism, to support the platforms and the candidates that embodied the best qualities of the founding fathers and conservative movement in Arizona, to promote the Constitution to the community at large. Those are our views. So a person who believes in National Socialism or believes in Marxism is incompatible with those viewpoints. They can join in the sense that they're in the room and they're listening to an argument and maybe they want to debate with us. That's totally fine, in my opinion. Maybe not the executive board's opinion. But if you want to have that debate with a person, we're trying to change minds, we're trying to get them out of that field, that's fine. But if we're talking about them being a member of the group or on the executive board, hell no. They are not Republicans. So if they have those opinions or they're affiliated with those groups privately and that's exposed, they need to leave CRU in that they're not Republicans, they're not conservative in our definition of it.
And they have a right to say that free speech needs to be done respectfully. You can state your views and respectfully,
That's
like,
not what the Constitution says,
so.
or means. And that's where I'm getting at. That's a leftist viewpoint right there.
Yeah,
is that free speech must be respected.
It's just,
No, it
this
does
is
not
their
mean
organization, so they can say that they want respectful free speech.
I just take issue with them saying that they support the Constitution and the fact that it supports free speech, because
Yeah, because
they
respectfully,
support
you're not gonna change
their
minds if you're
interpretation of
a
what
jerk
free
about
speech
it.
means, which free speech accommodates every speech, except for fighting.
And again, that's a perfect interpretation of free speech, and that's the world that I would like to live in. We don't live in that world, though. We're hypersensitive today,
Aren't you
and with our
supposed to lead
political.
by example?
Well, if we lead by example,
And if we
prove.
want the Constitution to be restored to what original intent to meaning is,
But listen,
then we should
listen,
be leading by example.
Listen, I'm practical. If we do that, CRU will not exist on ASU. So our mission and our objective won't go anywhere because we won't exist on this campus. So how do we, within the framework, use that to change the narrative, to change people's minds on the issues?
Like I said, I just think it's two-faced, so whatever. It's clear that I'm in the minority, so I'm,
Does anyone else want to add anything? Okay, so since we don't have the secretary, do you want to run the election for the vote?
We can do that, it's fine.
Julie, since you're the treasurer, both of you can do that. There are 7 qualified people in here, we need 5 to pass it.
5 to pass. Okay.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be by a paper ballot?
Yeah, so we have paper in that binder?
No. I have
I
paper
know.
in my backpack though. Well, we have paper in that binder, but not that I wanna use. No, I don't have paper, sorry.
I mean, we could tear off from the ban list. Why don't we do this, just cut this off here,
Yeah, sure.
give out 7 slices.
Rick, I got some paper.
Excellent, thank you. Look how prepared we are.
No, I think we got some paper.
Okay.
Tear off 7 slices, we'll need 7 more afterwards.
Okay.
It's an anonymous ballot, so we won't know who voted what way.
Yeah,
Just put yes or no. Yes, you want this amendment to pass. No, you don't want this amendment to pass. And then the executive board will count. While we're doing this, what do you guys think of Kelly Ward?
I haven't even kept up on her lately, so like,
She's
I don't know.
screwing up.
I don't know anything about her right now, what's going on.
I honestly, she's gonna be a 1-term chairman if she keeps this up.
What is she doing that's so bad? She used to be all cool, like what?
Well, the reason is the Republican Party is bankrupt right now. Oh, thanks.
Okay.
They're out of money. She went to Texas for like 2 months trying to get people to donate. All the McCain supporters aren't giving money to the party right now since Jonathan Lyons lost. And so she was told or reassured that if she proposes this tax increase for education and beats the Democrats at their own game by out competing them for taxes for their education, that the donors would return. And so that's why she's supporting it, from what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course she just lost her base. Her base just completely alienated her, and she's banning people and blocking people on Facebook and
What is
social media.
on with, okay, yo,
Yeah,
wait.
Was it 18.75%?
yeah.
Sales tax increase?
Does she realize what she's doing is bad, or is she just, cause I feel like, I'm like, or is she just really trying to help and she just has tunnel vision?
I think so. I think so.
You
And
know what I mean?
the people that are like closest to her, they didn't even know that she was doing this. Like she didn't consult with anyone. She just did it on her own.
Wow.
And then just want to have them come up and,
Yeah, if you guys, if you want to come up here and pass it up.
or the other 7, okay.
You want to count it?
Yeah.
I can't count it. I'm not on the
Yeah.
executive board. You haven't voted yet?
I had to dig for my pen.
You're good.
I was like, where's my pen at? It's right there.
One last vote. One last 7. Unless I can't count.
If you think I can count, it's like, it's okay, I don't have to use math in real life, so it's fine. It's fine.
All right, all the votes are up. Have had our treasurer look over the votes, the ballot count with me. It is 6 yeas, 1 nay, so this proposal does pass. Chesterfield, okay.
Okay, the next amendment is kind of similar to what we were talking about before. This one is saying anyone, same conversation, anyone who has beliefs that are contrary to Article 2, which is the purpose of CRU, which we had just shown you this slide here, and then discriminatory views with Article 11 would be this one if they have hidden intent. It's just reinforcing the same amendment. Does anyone want to debate for Article 10?
So, the one thing that's kind of weird to me is that language about willfully conceals. So if we had an open marks list, let's just say,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't be subject to that.
No, if they're an open Marxist, no, because they would be open. They would already be disqualified. Let me give you a background reference on this. A couple of years ago, before there was a college Republican chapter in Flagstaff, Arizona, a group of friends wanted to start a chapter in Flagstaff who had contact with friends in Tucson. And Tucson knew these kids and they gave them the material to start this chapter up and everything was great. The problem was the kids that were starting this up were Bernie Sanders supporters. And they used the Republican Party, college Republicans in Flagstaff to endorse Bernie Sanders. So it actually brought the attention from the national college Republicans from DC to come in there in the Flagstaff to completely eliminate the club because they were subverting it. They had the intent of messing with the system in order to support Bernie Sanders. So if we ever come into that kind of situation here where we have a person who pretends to be a Republican and they're a Marxist or something else, and we eventually find evidence to support that they're not really Republican, that needs to be cleaned up quickly. So that's where that story came from. Are we all good on that?
How many executive board members do we have here right now?
3.
Yeah, 3.
Okay.
Okay, are we good?
Yeah, I guess so.
We'll do another vote, pass these out again.
So you wouldn't have enough general members to carry out votes if I left?
What?
Are you gonna do like a walkout?
I'm just asking.
Well, it's from the beginning of the meeting. If you leave early, it's still in session.
Who's eligible? I don't know.
What?
Who's eligible? I don't know.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Go pass it to Dustin.
Yeah. You got one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kenny, I'm sorry, you're not a assistant.
Okay, you sure?
Yeah. I swear, it's no other reason.
I will be an online speaker.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I will be an online speaker.
Oh,
Okay, it's like we're recording.
good. Are there any other ballots out there?
There's one more ballot.
One more, okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Who?
He still got it.
No, he didn't want one.
All right, we have,
It's an abstain.
what's that?
If a person's eligible to vote, they don't vote, it's an abstain.
One abstention.
Yeah.
So on a count of 5 yeas to 1 nay to 1 abstain, the motion passes.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we have, everything we have on the agenda moving forward.
Robert's rules, you know.
The only other thing I've got, if you guys are interested, please, keep up to date on the Facebook page with the events we got coming up. We're gonna be focusing on Passport for August for the incoming freshmen, try to get membership. Katie Webb, definitely. June 26th, Democratic candidates are gonna be starting their primaries. So that'll be fun to watch, see some of the questions the moderators will be asking and what they're gonna be focusing on, so keep an eye on that. But otherwise, if nothing else, we can call it a night. Anything else, guys? All right, thank you for coming. Have a good summer.